All right, if you're a person who has a motor vehicle and you're driving on Indian roads these days, there's something that you will be worried about if you're not already, and that is the ethanol blended fuel E20. All our Instagram stories, Facebook stories are filled with people who are taking their cars out to servicing and suddenly their cars are jerking, knocking, their fuels are not giving them the mileage that they were hoping for, and it all boils down to E20. India's effort to blend fuels with ethanol to the tune of 20%. But, there's a lot of misconception and a lack of clarity there, gentlemen, on whether the fuel that you are filling in, whether it's E10, E20, sometimes the dealers are also not aware. So while it's a good thing that India is moving towards biofuels, trying to reduce emissions, but at the same time, it's not helping vehicle owners, Shri.
So I am completely on the biofuel side, Shweta. I'll tell you there's a lot of hysteria around the so-called biofuels that it's leading to knocking. I'll explain the science behind it. Okay, so if you take a flex fuel engine, which is, tweaked for biofuels versus normal IC engine, there's hardly any difference between the two. The areas where you make a tweak is basically in your the injection system, the fuel injection system, the pipe which carries the fuel. Why do we need those changes? Because ethanol as a chemical is slightly more corrosive because of the formic acid that forms in the fuel, because ethanol also absorbs moisture. Okay, so what you need as a consumer is basically only worry about regular maintenance. As long as you take it for maintenance, and the only wear and tear you'll experience in your engine is not of any of the metal parts, but the plastic and rubber components, because that is where the corrosion can really act. Now, the other thing about ethanol is that it is a less energy dense fuel compared to gasoline, which is petrol, right? So what then it means is ethanol is going to give you slightly lower average compared to a petrol engine. How much lower? If it's a car that was made pre-2015, it's going to be 3 to 6% lower in fuel economy. If it's made after 2015, it's going to be 1 to 3% only, which hardly matters. But what you're gaining is good karma. You're going to be emitting less nitrogen dioxide and less of foul gases in the atmosphere. Your children are going to breathe easier. So I think there's a lot of hysteria. I really urge our viewers not to go by just the social media chatter on this. Read up scientific papers on this. Look at the most credible sources and trust your government, please.
All right. Rakesh, Nitin Gadkari has come on record saying that this is the car lobby. They don't want you to be happy about E20. They want you to buy new cars because let's not forget, all those cars which were brought prior to 2020 are not E20 enabled, which is they are likely to corrode your fuel pipes because they are not non-corrosive in nature. They're not made for E20. So this is a hysteria. But at the same time, people have genuine concerns.
Yeah, so I mean, first and foremost, let me just try and reconnect this particular theme with the earlier theme. India is importing about, huge amounts of, fuel because we have a deficiency there. That deficiency for the last 70 years, we've been struggling with the policy framework to mitigate that. We haven't been able to do so. We brought in EVs so late in the day. We got hybrid, and now we have this ethanol blend, which is another solution to the larger problem of reducing our import dependence for fuel. Any new idea is bound to be met with resistance. He's explained the technicalities, which I'm not so good at, but there is going to be, and then lobbies, there's no end to lobbies in India today. In any developing economy, lobbies will work. There's a EV lobby, there is a hybrid lobby, and we know the players at it, and there's an ethanol lobby. The minister is right in his KRA to push for a change, where we are going to be far more efficient in terms of our fuel output from the climate perspective. Where I find a fault with the government in this case is that with a minister like Gadkari, who is so articulate and is always available to the media, most of the policy frameworks in this country, we have failed to inform and educate the viewer, the consumer in this case, and look at farm laws.
And stakeholder consultation.
No, consultation may be there, but that's behind the door. I'm talking about front end.
So I think that's an opportunity for Shweta, a news anchor and News9 team, to actually educate people on biofuels, the hype, sift the hype from reality, and people will find that biofuels are as safe, as your regular fuel. In fact, they're better for the environment. The only thing you might compromise a little bit, because of the nature of ethanol, it's less energy dense compared to petrol. So
But
you need
I'm going to
more
quote you some
ethanol to burn
figures
to
and-
produce the same amount of
No,
energy.
if I may add, in the interim also, because of this transition, again, the middle class is buying the cars, and that too at hugely
right.
taxed. So middle class is a political orphan. I keep saying this. I've told you this earlier as well. So that comes to play again. The government is looking at reducing its import bill. The government is trying to, bring in more revenue, and new cars will, also.
And just to add to Rakesh, Shweta, biofuels have been around since the mid-1970s. When Brazil first introduced its biofuels policy, it was 1975. And Brazil has very successfully used biofuels to mitigate emissions and also enhance its own energy security. That was the reason why Brazil launched this policy to reduce, because this came at the time of the 1970 oil crisis. So Brazil launched this scheme to make sure that their energy dependence on fossil fuel comes down.
To move the transition
Yeah.
for the consumer.
To the two of you, I'm going to quote some figures, because we may sound like privileged people sitting in our studios discussing biofuels without taking in consideration of people who actually drive.
Go for it.
So here's some data. Auto workshops in Pune and Bengaluru are reporting 20 to 30% rise in fuel-related service cases in the past 6 months alone. People are reporting hugely a decrease in mileage to the tune of 10 to
pointed to
20%.
that.
Is that purely because of biofuels,
No, it's not
or
just
is it because of fuel contamination from your regular,
monsoon
likely-
also,
likely
what is the data telling you?
No, Shri, monsoon also has a seasonality in terms of
No, I mean, there could be regular contamination also in the fuel. It's not necessarily biofuels.
Right.
It depends on even biofuel, if it is contaminated, will lead to this problem. So does that mean biofuels per se, high quality, is it bad? I don't think so.
No, and also from the technology
So cross.
perspective. No, Shri, the blend may not be perfect right now. It's in the evolutionary stage. The blend between ethanol and the rest of the petrol, these are emerging technologies.
No, and we are not even a 20% blend. I mean, Brazil has a 27% blend, and their engines are working. They have flex engines, obviously, which solve for the problems, which is, we talked about the fuel line, the gasket around the engines, all
exactly.
those issues.
So which is what car makers are saying. They're saying it needs stronger engine parts, it needs different ECUs, it needs corrosion.
So let them go for it.
Resistant.
See, the car makers or anyone else
But
in this
all the
country
cars-
can't say that we will not go biofuel.
Right, but all the cars that have been brought prior to 2020 don't have these systems in place, which essentially means that their cars are going to corrode. Their fuel pipes are going to corrode. So while E20 is a good idea today, perhaps it's a little too early and hastily
I would say we are
implemented.
late. We are late to the game.
Exactly.
Of course, the transition has its blues, as they call them. We should mitigate them from the policy matters level to the car dealers to car manufacturers. So yes, the consumer is facing a bit of a challenge right now. These are interim transitional
Absolutely. I think
problems.
India is already underperforming on its biofuels target. I think there's
We
a
are
case
late.
for greater use of biofuels, not less.
Not less.
Okay, so before I end and before I let this go, I think one
We don't want to be being seen as anti-consumer. As I said, this is transition and it has its birth pangs of a new technology.
Right, but I also must say this. At this point, I think dealers should also be aware of what kind of fuel they're giving to people.
That's
because
right.
I think there
So
needs to be
education
more
is zero. I told you,
transparency.
education is zero. Farm
Yes.
laws.
So I think
had
it's a
some
matter of
inherent
awareness.
strength.
Exactly, it's a matter of awareness. You equip yourself as a consumer on what fuel you should be using in your vehicle, and how often should you get it serviced. What are the
Each
parts which are
station should have
vulnerable,
a AV.
and get them serviced.
Each
That's all.
station should have a AV, the petrol filling station, of what this is, how you manage this, and right it when you buy the car to the time you fill petrol every week or every fortnight, depending upon your usage. This information is critical.
So
Otherwise,
sorry to
they'll be-
disappoint the activist in you, Shweta, but this is one point on science I'm not going to concede.
All right, to all the consumers who are not very happy with E20 blend, you heard what our editors had to say. It's perhaps little too late for India. It may be a little bit of inconvenient to you at the moment, but it is the need of the hour. So perhaps car makers will also need to adapt very, very quickly. We need more transparency and hopefully
and
that
information.
and information, and hopefully we'll be able to bring you that here on News 9.